Hi, good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on your time zone. But welcome to the live streaming FoodSense webinar. So we do like to do this um, twice in a month. So we like to do it once in our morning, once in our evening. The morning is for our colleagues in Asia, and the evening is for our colleagues in North and South America. So thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'll basically just jump into it and go quite fast. We're here to be efficient with your time, so let's do that. So we are going to talk about FoodSense Generation 4. I've got a few words here. FoodSense Generation 4 is a rapid test, primarily for food ingredients at the moment. So today we're going to talk about chili and ginger, though we've just had some inquiries about pepperin, so I'm pretty sure we'll be doing pepperin pretty soon. And it's about digitization and traceability in the supply chain. So at the moment, sometimes the supply chain is kind of, written documents. There's not necessarily an electronic record of the data. If there is an electronic record, it may be a PDF. There's not like a pure digital signal for the test, but we will talk about that today. And there's a high degree of traceability today. When you see my colleague Solran do a test later on, she'll log in with her username and password. The test data will end up with a timestamp on it, the raw signal, and also her kind of credentials. So we actually know who did the test as well. So there's a lot of traceability in this technology as well. I'm only going to say this very quickly because we just want to be efficient, really. So the brief introduction to ZP. So thank you for coming today. And ZP is a company that we've been around since 2014. We're ISO 13485, so we're certified for the, as it says here, really, the contract development and contract manufacture of electrochemical biosensors. So though we're not going to talk about electrochemistry this afternoon, you will see two aspects of this technology. One of them is the Scoville Heat Units, SHU, and the other aspect is because of the traceability and transparency part that I mentioned, you'll also see the voltammetry as well, which happens to be electrochemical. We manufacture out of Norway, and I'll talk about our facilities in Norway and UK. The only reason we show the picture really is just to kind of give you a sense of depth within the business, even though today you'll meet Solran, who's in the middle row here, and then myself, Martin Peacock, at the front here. So just to say that if everyone becomes, or anyone who becomes a FoodSense customer, everyone gets personal online training. So we do a training session when people first get their kit. I realize I just had a kit arrive with me, in fact, so maybe I need my personal online training. We do weekly webinars. So if you have a technical question regarding FoodSense, is my data good? Talk about statistics of analysis, talk about standard deviation, talk about outlier rejection, then weekly webinars are the place to come. And then we do these monthly webinars. And as I say, we do pretty committed to them. We do them every month. And it's really so that, let's say somebody is joining the company and you want them to get training, they can at least come to these webinars and kind of get the latest and greatest on FoodSense Generation 4. That said, there is actually a webinar on the 28th of February. So if you like what you see today and you'd like other colleagues to attend, we're going to put this video up on YouTube afterwards. And there'll be a link to the next webinar, which is in approximately 1 month's time. It's worth sometimes coming to these extra webinars because they're not repetitions. All the time, ZP, we learn things, we're interacting with people, and so insights and hints and tricks are always coming with us. Now, this FoodSense Generation 4, it's been a long time coming, but at this point now it's smaller. It's much easier to use. Solran would do these demos, end of last year, and she said, "Oh, be very careful. Don't get the solution into the connectors." All those problems have gone away. Well, they're not problems, but those little touches have gone away. The system's more accurate, and its accuracy really comes from transparency, that we can see when the data is good and when the data is bad. It's cloud enabled. This is a technology of the sort of 2024 in terms of it is cloud enabled. So every data point is all going to the cloud, and it's stored there and it's saved behind your username and password. But if you want technical support, you can share it with us. This is a multi-analyte system. So this little box that you'll see today, you'll see us do at least 2 food ingredients tests with it. But we're actually doing a lot of tests with this particular unit. and you'll see how we can go from test to test to test using different QR codes. So today we'll do chili and ginger. And we can also do, for example, total antioxidative status. This is an indicator to show how fresh something is, or also to predict the shelf life of the product as well. I said it was easier to use. So this is the technology running in my hand at the moment. And in the top left hand, that is, you'll find that it's very easy to put the sensor into this device. There's no kind of slotting it in. You can just take it out. You'll see that these cartridges are much easier to handle these days. And as I say, you're not trying to slot it in, you just place it in there, it self-centers, click it up, and bang, it's connected. You'll also see that, with something like a chili saucer rather, or chili puree, you may spill something on the connector, not the connector, but on the housing. You'll see that it's very easy to take apart. So there we are. I take it apart like that. These are held by neodymium magnets or rare earth magnets. We can put the sensor in and then just watch the way it clicks back so effortlessly as well. Now, Solrun, you'll see her for live in a bit, but here we're just running through the whole fact is that we have an app, we have the hardware, we have the sensors, we only have to put your sample onto it, and then we get a rapid determination of the Scoville Heat Unit. And you'll also see this as well, that if you have a background in electrochemistry, you'll be familiar with electrochemical techniques. The reason we can talk about this so openly is it is patent protected. It's from a license from a patent at the University of Oxford, and we've licensed the IP. Something that's very elegant, and you'll see this today, is the way we can go from chili to ginger, for example, just by scanning a QR code. So there's unique sensors for each analyte or each test, and there's also a unique QR code for each analyte as well. And you'll see that in action today. I didn't give you a heads up, but if you watch the recording of this later on, I'll send you a recording afterwards. You can scan this QR code off an Android phone, and it will basically install what's called the Sense It All app on your phone. And if you haven't got an Android, but rather you've got an Apple, and the fact that this is on the Apple Store is a kind of indication of the quality, because it's really not straightforward getting apps onto the Apple Store. They have a very high bar for doing that. I need to change that double R in store, but that said, so if you're using an iPhone, no problems. If you're using an Android, no problems. We've got the app on both of those stores. When you have installed the app, the first thing it will do is ask to access your camera, because what it wants to do is it wants to scan a QR code, because the app wants to know, what is it you want to test. Well, you don't tell it. Once upon a time you would kind of look through a menu. That's 2023. This is 2024. So now you scan QR codes. If you scan the QR code here, it'll do for chili. If you scan the QR code here, it'll do it for ginger. And if you do this QR code here, it'll do it for total antioxidative status. So QR codes tell this one little meter exactly what it is you want to measure. And then it essentially programs the meter to do exactly the right thing. And I'll talk through this first of all, but you'll see this for yourself in a minute. The first thing that Solron was just doing there then is just showing you that she was turning it on, because there's a little button at the top. And in fact, there's little flashing LEDs at the front. So it's really nice because it really guides you through the user experience. This is something that's very different on the Generation 4. But what you're going to find out, and what Solron's doing here, is actually showing you how to run the whole instrument. But you're going to find out that this really consists of four main parts: the sensor, the meter, the app, and a cloud system called Julie. Julie didn't come out of nowhere. This has been 10 years in development just itself, just a database. A database that can receive this kind of information is not something you can get off the shelf. It's something that ZP has actually built from scratch. So we've got four main elements here: the sensor, the meter, the app, and Julie. And for all these things to work, they all have to be robust. One of the things that I didn't really touch upon, it's not relevant today, is how reproducible these sensors. In general, ZP, I think, makes one of the world's best sensors, because we're very good at repeatability. If you want to make a sensor and you want it to be calibration free, then you have to be really good at manufacturing. So the sensors are a really important part of this. The meters are a really important part of this. The apps are a really important part, and Julie's the important part. Now, you put the sensor into the meter, and you put the sample on the sensor. and you'll see Solron doing that. Now the meter doesn't know what to do, but the app will tell it what to do because it does a Bluetooth connection. So we're very lucky to live in this world where Bluetooth, we have technology such as Bluetooth. The meter will run the assay, and it'll run it in I think it's about 30 seconds. It's pretty quick these days. And then the meter will give the data back to the app. The app will give the data to Julie, and you'll see the result on your phone. So you'll see Solron do this, and within a second, you've got Scoville Heat Units. This is the bit about transparency. So the fact is, you do the assay yourself. So that gives you something. It gives you speed. You did it yourself. You'll see how quick it is today, and it gives you certainty. Certainty is because you did everything, or your technician did everything, and you got the result. So you understand the whole process, and you get the result. So that gives you a certainty of where it comes from. There's another aspect to this, which is actually transparency, that you don't ever have to look at this, but all the raw data went to the cloud. Every single part of it went to the cloud, including the raw data, the concentration of capsaicin, when was a test run, the test ID, and the operator. Everything goes there. So later on, if somebody's, for example, challenged as to, who did it, when did they do it, what was the result, all that can be found. And what's nice about it as well is you can share it with colleagues. And you don't, when I say sharing, you're not emailing data to people. You're inviting them to your, it's called a cluster. It's really a file, but or folder. But you're sharing it via the cloud system. You're not having to actually send them stuff, and it's not, it's not at all manual. You just put their email in, and it'll share with them. They can access your data, and it's very good for us as well, because if we need to troubleshoot somebody, so West Coast USA, I'm supporting clients out there, and in India as well. It's easy to support people, and you can see their data, let's say, in real time. So when I say their data, we're not going to get into it today, but you will see this data when Solron is doing some tests. But we can see, can we see the peaks? Can we see the oxidation? Can we see the reduction peaks? Do we see the distinctive shape for capsaicin? And if we see these things, then we know it's kind of running well. As I say, there's at least 2 tests that you'll see today. One of them will be on chili, and the other one will be on ginger. Same meter, different buffers, different sensors, same app, but running different assays on the app, but the same cloud system. So there's some bits that stay constant, and there's some bits that change. But what it means is that we're quite interested in hearing from people about other food quality tests that they'd like on this, because I think it's we're very good at doing assay development at ZP. So the more assays we can put onto the platform, essentially the lower cost it becomes, because it becomes a multi assay instrument. So today we'll do chili and ginger. But at ZP, we do have something like 40 biosensors on our sort of standard products page. And for example, we've just been working on glucose. We've also been working on pH recently. We've also been working on potassium. We've also been working on nitrate and adding that to this platform as well. Not so relevant today, but just to say that we are interested in hearing what people would actually like us to add to the platform. Now, there's only there's 3 ways of measuring, or maybe I could say there's 4 ways of measuring capsaicin. Tasting, terrible idea, very subjective, not at all repeatable, not at all digital, not at all traceable. If you've got a slight cold like I have today, then that my personal response to capsaicin could be variable. The other way of doing it is the Wilbur-Scoville organoleptic testing, invented in 1912. It's now come past its expiration date in terms of, organoleptic testing is slightly better than just tasting it yourself, but it's very complicated and not very repeatable. And then there's also HPLC. Now, the problem with HPLC, especially if you do have a background from academia and industry, you'll be aware of HPLC. So we've got 2 technologies here for objectively measuring the capsaicin in chili products, HPLC and FoodSense. HPLC, very expensive to buy, very expensive to run. Buying it maybe $50,000 US, running it organic solvents, the disposal of organic solvents, new columns, new fittings, software licenses. There's all sorts of expenses associated with owning and running an HPLC system. And what it means is that people are doing under testing. So if you have a crop of chilies, how much testing of those chili peppers can you actually afford to do by HPLC? And the answer is not much really, because in the USA, for example, it could cost you $100 per test. And so actually people may be only testing a few chilies or a few grams of chili powder, but they're not doing a lot of testing. Whereas with FoodSense, because it's rapid and low cost, they're able to do a lot more testing. And it's actually quite slow to test on HPLC. Not so much the test itself. I think the runtime may be about 20 minutes, but the sample preparation can be something like 5 hours. And I would say it's a black box with no sense of error. So what I mean by that is how many chili farmers really own an HPLC system, or how many of them are actually gathering the crop, sending a few off to the lab, waiting some time, and then eventually getting the results back. And when they do send for testing, how many samples are really run? Is it a significant number of samples, or just maybe a few, because that's all that actually there's time for and budget for? And then when I say there's no sense of error, if you have a very heterogeneous product like a chili pepper, the chili is the capsaicin is not isolated in the certain, well, it's actually isolated in certain parts of the pepper. It's a very heterogeneous sample. And if I have a row of chili plants, the peppers from different plants will have different hotnesses. So it's important to actually do quite a lot of testing to actually do statistical analysis of um, what's the average hotness and what's the range of hotness I can expect across that crop. With FoodSense, we can do a lot more testing, and therefore all the data is a lot more statistically robust. It's a lot lower cost to run the tests. It definitely allows for a lot more testing, and it's definitely a lot faster. Sample prep is quick. You'll see Solon do it now. Runtime is 30 seconds. It's all pretty fast, and it's transparent. If you doubt it, you can go and look at the raw data. And we do that for our clients. And with HPLC, you may get it. You've got several sources of error. The biggest source of error you actually have is under testing. So you can have sampling error, and you just happen to pull a sample that was either high in capsaicin or low in capsaicin. You obviously have to do an extraction. That's a manual process. You may have to do a bit of a dilution, at least a dilution before injection on the column. You've got the HPLC itself, which has a certain error associated with it. Not high, admittedly, but the HPLC is part of this workflow. But what's going on then is you get a chromatogram for the elution of capsaicin, and of course you have to turn not of course, but you actually turn this chromatogram into Scoville Heat Units by looking at it relative to a calibration line. And the question is, well, how often is that? When was that calibration last run? Was that HPLC system calibrated 1 day ago, 1 week ago, or 1 month ago? Now, I know what happens I think in HPLC, let's say test houses, they save up the samples, they do a calibration, then they run the samples. So that's sometimes part of the delay is actually, they do want to do a good job and they want to test calibrate the instrument. So they can't just calibrate the instrument, run one test. No, they would have to actually build up a few samples and then maybe calibrate, run all those samples whilst the instrument is still within calibration. But you could actually say that, sampling is a problem, manual extraction is a problem. If you add up all the errors, what I could say about HPLC is it's expensive to own, it's expensive to run, and therefore it's expensive to do tests upon. It's nobody's fault. It's just the way the instrument is. There's no transparency on this, not to the grower. The grower gets a certificate of analysis. They have to believe it. There's no statistical sort of look at the average, look at the ranges, but that's not going on. They just get a certificate with a number on it, and it may have some error associated with it. And I think that the error might be plus or minus 25%. But the more samples, well, let's talk about that actually. So if I take a chili, some chili peppers, and I send it to a lab, I will get a result. If I take some chili peppers and send it to a different lab, I'll get a different result. If I take some chili peppers and send it to a different lab, I'll get a different result. So this does say something about the fundamental problem of the belief system in HPLC. If you send same field, different peppers sent to different labs, of course you'll get different results, but people really take these results as, oh, they must be accurate. Of course, what you really want to be doing is testing a lot more peppers from that field on the FoodSense so you actually have a sense of the range of hotness coming from that field, for example, or that chili powder. But there's a lot of under testing going on. I would also say that if you took samples, like call it chili peppers, call it chili powders, and sent it to a lab, you'll get a certificate of analysis. If you sent the same sample to the lab at a different time, you'll get a different result. And if you send the same sample to the same lab at a different time, you'll get a different result again. It's statistically is going to happen. They just can't give you the same result. And the reason I bring it up is because people are very really kind of invested in these results from the lab, but they really don't have a sense of the variability that actually is coming from the HPLC system. No criticism of the technicians, no criticism of the instrument itself. It's just this is a very heterogeneous sample type, and you have to do multiple tests on it to really understand the range. And that's not happening because it's too expensive and too slow to actually do. So you get a certificate of analysis, and they may be running what's called the AOAC method, which is a perfectly fine method, and you'll get an absolute number, but no plus or minus error on it. But with the FoodSense, actually, we do get people to do multiple tests because they can afford to do it and they can do it fast, and we can understand what the true, let's say, range of these things actually is. Now, what I'm going to do now is I want to be quick. So I've kind of given you a quick introduction to FoodSense Generation 4, apps available on the App Store. Hardware is very small and handheld. I say it's quick and simple to use. What I'll do is I'll stop sharing. I will turn off my camera and then turn off my microphone, and my colleague Solran will join us. Hi, Solran.
Hi, yeah, so my name is Solran. I'm a scientist here at Simon Peacock, and I will just run you through a couple of demos with the FoodSense Generation 4. So let me show it up close. So as you can see, it fits perfectly inside the palm of my hand, and I can also deattach that movable part just so that it's easier to clean it and so forth. It's produced or designed with using it in the lab. So that's why we have these features that come in quite handy. So today we will test a chili sample and a ginger sample. So in order for us to test the sample, we first need to prepare the sample. So I'll just shake it a bit, like Martin was talking about, like that the samples themselves are not homogeneous. Tabasco is fairly homogeneous itself though, but what I will do is I will add some Tabasco into a Petri dish like this, just so that it's easier for me to pipette it, not from the narrow bottle. And then I will add some of the chili pop buffer into a vial like this. I will prepare a 1:10 ratio, as Tabasco is not that pungent, so a 1:10 ratio will be sufficient. So I will add 900 microliters into the vial like this, into the vial like that, and then I will add 100 microliter of the Tabasco sauce. So just need to adjust the pipettes. Just like this. And then I will pipette 100 microliter of the Tabasco sauce into the vial. And then I will mix the sample. Okay, right now you can see that it's very heterogeneous. It's separated into two parts. But if I use the vortex and just let it mix for a while, we'll see that we get a much more homogeneous solution, and we're really getting that capsaicin into the buffer. So the chili pop buffer is an electrolyte, and it's also giving the same environment for all of the samples. So now you can see the same sample just mixed well, and you can see that it's more homogeneous. You can also see that it had some particles in it, and that's okay. We'll still pipette it onto our sensor, and those particles won't interfere with our tests. So the next thing I'll do is go to the Sense It All app on my phone. So here you have test settings. Well, first, we can scan the QR code, because right now I've already chosen the chili sensor assay. But if I click that button next to chili sensor, it's ready to scan a new QR code. So I'll scan the QR code just like that. And then I still have the chili sensor assay like I want to. And I will change the test settings. So here I've written chili in the sample ID. I've changed the cluster name to FoodSense Demo, and my initials are SL, so that's the operator ID. And these details is just so that it's easier for me to sort through my data in Julie later, and I'll show you where they appear. If you don't put this fill this in, you'll still be able to differentiate between your different samples by looking at the timestamps on your tests. So I will push this movable part down. I will insert a sensor just like that, and then push it back up so that it's in contact with the pins that you can see inside. And then I will pipette 50 microliter of the sample that I just prepared onto the sensor. And this instruction you can see in the app. So if I click go to assay, it gives me some instructions. I can select the dilution factor, as I said, for chili. For the Tabasco sample, I'm choosing a dilution factor of 10. So I've already placed the sensor into the cartridge. I mixed the sample, and I will now apply 50 microliters of the sample onto the sensor. So just like that. And then I will add I will just add 50 microliter of the sample like that. For that. And then I will adjust the volume of the pipette to 50 microliters. And then when I've added the sample into the pipette tip, I will dispose of it on the electrodes of the sensor. So be careful not to scratch the surface of the electrodes. Then I will go to the app and I will click start measurements. So it's important that you don't wait too long between pipetting the sample onto the sensor and starting the measurement, because capsaicin is very fond of the surface of the electrodes. So if so, your results will appear to be spicier than it is, or higher concentrated. So we'll give it 30 seconds to finish, and it's now go through those cyclical tomograms and assessing the peaks to say just how much capsaicin we have in our sample. So the results are back, and here you can see the results are recorded in molarity, ppm, and Scoville Heat Units. And it also says upload complete, which means that it's been uploaded to Julie. This is Tabasco, so we do expect the Scoville Heat Unit for the sample to be between 2,005 and 5,000 Scoville Heat Units, according to their own webpage. So this is right on track. And then I will show you Julie, what it looks like. Before, so refresh, so that is loading the new report. And then reports. Can you hear me all right, Martin? Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I hear you perfectly fine. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so here's the news data, and you can see that I changed the sample ID to chili, and it also has a timestamp and a date stamp. It has the operator ID, which I filled in, and it's also uploaded to the cluster FoodSense demo, which you can see further out in the hierarchy. So here we see the first scan of the Tabasco, but it's the second scan we're most interested in. And here's the analysis of the sample, and you can also find the micromolarity here as well. So this Julie is sort of uploading the raw data and analyzing it before sending it back to your phone, where you get the results on the screen without having to look at the curves. So it has its purpose. Like if you're in the lab, you want quick results, it's sufficient by just looking at that result screen on your phone. But if you really want to see what's happening with your sample and yeah, you want to take a closer look, then looking at Julie and looking at those results might provide you some more information. And yeah, so the next sample we will test is the ginger sample. So we have a ginger shot sample here, so I'll just shake it a bit again just to make sure that we have a homogeneous sample. This is also not too high of a concentration of gingerol, so we'll prepare a 1:10 ratio for this one as well. So what I will do is I will add 100 microliter of the ginger buffer into the vial, just like that. And then I will add 900 microliter of the ginger buffer, which has properties very similar to chili buffer. So then I'll pipette it into the vial just like that, and you see that it mixes quite easily, more easily than the Bosco. So I'll show you what it looks like right now. But I'll still use the vortex just to make sure that I have as much of a homogeneous sample as possible. Just like that. And then I will start preparing my device and my app. So I need to scan the QR code of the ginger sensor. So I'll click that button next to chili sensor so that I can scan a new sensor, and I'll scan the QR code for ginger. And here you see that a new assay is appearing on the screen. I will change the test settings to the sample ID ginger, just so that it's easier for us to differentiate on Julie afterwards. And then go to assay, and I will show you the close look. We still have the chili sensor that we used for testing before. So we need to dispose of that. And it's important to know that these sensors are one-time use sensors. And that's because the chilies and the gingerol or capsaicin and gingerol are molecules, organic molecules that are very fond of the surface of the electrodes. So if you would run it over, or you would try to use them several times, the results will be inaccurate and more spicy than expected. So again, I will pipette 50 microliters onto the electrodes of the sensor. And then I will so here's the sample. It was 500, not 50. So 50 microliter of the sample onto the sensor, just like that. And then I will go to the app and I will click start measurements. Again, it takes about 30 seconds for the assay to run through, and it's going through that first cyclic voltammogram and then that second voltammogram, and looking at those peaks and just assessing just how much gingerol we have in our sample. So we'll look at the raw data in just a few seconds. So the results came back as too low. So I might not have mixed the sample too well, but we can still look at the data in Julie. So it's actually really good to show this as well. So if the app has this, or the app has this ideal range where it wants to detect the concentration of your sample. And it is also providing information if you have too much of a concentration or too low of a concentration. So that's what it's saying now, that it wants a higher concentration for the sample to ideal range. But I can still show you the Julie data. Julie samples, and we'll look at what the gingerol sample looked like. Okay, so here it seems like we didn't have a contact with the surface. So that's why it's really good to have Julie. So that's actually giving you information on what is happening. Because right now, like, my first guess was that I had too low a concentration, but in fact, it is a connection issue, which doesn't happen that often. So
no, I'll run it again because it's very interesting. As you say, we can always do the quality control. So you can essentially, you could do the quality control by just going online, looking online, saying that's not right, is it? So have another quick go.
Yeah. So right now I'm inserting a new sensor into a sensor cartridge into the device. So again, I will add some sample onto the sensor, just like this. And add like that. And then I will click go to assay and start measurements. And now I'll show you the screen. It's currently running. So we'll see if the gingerol data appears like this, and we did a good sample preparation. Okay, so now the results came back with molarity and milligram per liter. You might notice that we don't give it in Scoville Heat Units because that is a labeling we do for a capsaicin. And it also says upload complete, which means that the data has been uploaded to Julie. So let's take a quick look at the data in Julie then and see if we get more than just the noise we got last time. So here you see the first scan with oxidation peak, reduction peak, and here's the second scan with those two distinct oxidation peaks. So again, you can read the molarity from the results in here. And you can also see that the data is much better than the one that we looked at before. So I think that was all I wanted to show you.
Perfect. Appreciate it. So thanks for that, Solrun. It is good actually because we did say about that transparency, and as Solrun says, it doesn't actually happen very often where we get a bad run like that. But it was nice to see because actually you saw it. It looked like nonsense. You're not going to report it. Let's say to this, but when I say report it, it's logged forever. But we were, you're able to go in and say, no, I know it's not right, and go back in and test it. And that's the thing. That's the problem that you have with, when you don't do the testing yourself, or the testing's done outside of your facility, that you can't always see that these things happen. So I just want to do a kind of quick summary. So I think what you've seen today is that the instrument's actually quite easy to use. The instrument's super fast. The instrument will just give you a simple number. It was milligrams per liter, or call it ppm for gingerol, or Scoville Heat Units for capsaicin. All the data is saved, low user ID, the time and date. So there's a good transparency and there's a good traceability as well. And rather than 5 hours of sample prep, it was just a few sort of seconds. So appreciate you coming in this afternoon or this morning for you. And if you have any questions, I think it's basically sort of don't hesitate to reach out to us at ZP. Special thanks to Solrun. I realize you stayed late this evening, Solrun, so thank you so much. And if anyone later on, we'll send out a recording of this video, and feel free to share it with essentially with colleagues, etc. Okay, I want to say thank you and have a good rest of the day. Okay, take care. Bye bye, guys.